The next 18 hours would go down in human history as the moment their species truly came of age. What had begun as humanity's first contact with alien life had transformed into something none of them had expected. The first time humans had to fight for their survival against an enemy from the stars. Sarah Chen stood in the center of what was now being called the Global Defense Coordination Center, a hastily assembled command post that linked every major military installation on Earth. Screens surrounded her showing satellite feeds, energy readings, and tactical displays from across the globe. But it was the smaller screen in front of her that held her attention. The one showing the terrified faces of the captured humans aboard the alien vessels. "Status report," she called out. Colonel Maria Santos from the Brazilian Space Command spoke first. "All ground-based telescopes and radio arrays are now linked into the global network. We've got eyes on everything in near-Earth orbit." "Good. Dr. Nakamura, what about the quantum interference plan?" Dr. Kim Nakamura looked up from her calculations. "CERN is coordinating with Fermilab, KEK, and DESY. If we can synchronize the particle accelerators and focus them on the same quantum frequency, we should be able to disrupt their vacuum energy extraction." "Should?" General Morrison raised an eyebrow. "This is entirely theoretical," Dr. Nakamura admitted. "We're essentially trying to punch holes in space-time itself. The calculations alone are staggering." Agent Reed approached with a tablet full of data. "We've been analyzing the footage of our people inside their ships. Look at this." He played a video segment showing one of the captured astronauts clearly mouthing words toward the viewing port. Dr. Webb, who had been studying the footage, spoke up. "He's saying, not real threat. Ships are fake. At least, that's what it looks like." Sarah leaned forward. "Fake how?" "We think he's trying to tell us the ships are mostly empty space. Hollow constructs designed to look impressive but lacking real substance." "That would explain a lot," mused Dr. Volkov. "The energy readings we've been detecting could be entirely for show, like a pufferfish making itself look larger to scare away predators." Before Sarah could respond, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes from Space Command called out urgently. "We've got incoming communication from the alien vessels." "Put it through," Sarah ordered. Ambassador Kale's image appeared on the main screen, but something was different. His perfect composure was gone, replaced by what looked unmistakably like frustration. "Director Chen," he said, his melodious voice carrying a sharp edge, "your delay has forced us to take more direct action. We are beginning evacuation procedures for New York City. Citizens are advised to gather in designated areas for transport." "Evacuation to where?" Sarah asked calmly. "To safety," Kale replied. "Away from the approaching devourers." Sarah glanced at the tactical display showing the alien ship's positions, then back at Kale. "Ambassador, I have a question about these devourers." "Time for questions has passed. Humor me," Sarah said, her diplomatic smile never wavering. "If they're as dangerous as you claim, and if they've been destroying civilizations for eons, why are you so eager to stay in this system to evacuate us? Shouldn't you be fleeing yourself?" Kale's pause was longer this time. "We are protected by our superior technology, the same superior technology that requires you to evacuate entire species rather than fight. The coalition does not engage in warfare," Kale said stiffly. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Right. You preserve life by relocating it. How many species have you successfully relocated over the years?" "Many dozens." "And where exactly do you relocate them to?" "Which systems?" Another pause. "That information is classified for security reasons." "Classified," Sarah repeated. "How convenient." "Classified. How convenient." On her peripheral screens, Sarah could see data flowing in from around the globe. The particle accelerators were almost ready for coordinated activation. Military units were moving into position near major cities. Most importantly, their deep space monitoring arrays had detected something interesting. "Ambassador," Sarah continued, "I've been thinking about your story, and I realized something doesn't add up. Director Chen, every moment we waste in conversation puts more lives at risk." You say the Devourers are coming from deep space, approaching our system, but our arrays show no sign of any massive fleet or entity. Now, either they're completely undetectable by any known physics, or, Kale prompted, though he looked like he already knew where this was going, or they're not coming from out there at all. Sarah gestured toward the ceiling. They're already here. The silence stretched for several seconds. When Kale spoke again, his voice had changed. The melodious, concerned tone was gone, replaced by something harder. You are more perceptive than anticipated. Thank you, Sarah said. I take that as a compliment. Now, shall we dispense with the charade? Kale's image flickered, and when it stabilized, his appearance had changed. The pale blue skin was gone, replaced by something gray and chitinous. His large, kind eyes had become compound structures that reflected light like a beetle's shell. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made every human in the room feel instinctively uneasy. Very well, the creature said. You have forced our hand prematurely. We are the harvesters. And yes, we are what you would call the Devourers. We consume not worlds, but the potential of species, their knowledge, their creativity, their genetic diversity. And the coalition, Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer, does not exist. We work alone, moving from system to system, harvesting what is useful before moving on. Your species showed unusual promise, so we developed a more sophisticated approach. Secretary General Reyes stepped forward. How many other worlds have you done this to? Hundreds, the creature said, with what might have been pride. Most species eagerly accept our protection once they understand the alternative. Your refusal is unusual, Sarah smiled grimly. We're a stubborn species, so we have learned. But your stubbornness will not save your people. We have your outer system colonies. We can take your cities one by one, if necessary. You could try, Sarah agreed. But I think you'll find us more difficult prey than you're used to. The creature that called itself Kale tilted its head in a distinctly insectoid gesture. You have no weapons capable of threatening our vessels. Don't we? Sarah turned to Dr. Nakamura. Doctor, please activate the quantum interference grid. Around the globe, particle accelerators that had been built to probe the fundamental nature of reality were instead turned into weapons. Beams of energy focused on precise quantum frequencies lanced through space toward the three alien vessels. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The ship's energy signatures flickered and began to collapse. What had appeared to be solid, massive structures revealed themselves as sophisticated holographic projections wrapped around much smaller cores. Impossible, the creature hissed. Improbable, Sarah corrected. We've been studying quantum physics for over a century. Did you really think we wouldn't figure out how to disrupt vacuum energy extraction? The alien ships were struggling now, their facade of power crumbling. But they still held human prisoners, and Sarah knew the situation was far from resolved. You may have damaged our harvesting platforms, the creature said, but we still hold your people. Surrender, or they will be processed. Processed, Sarah repeated. I assume that's a euphemism for something unpleasant. Their knowledge and genetic material will be extracted and stored. Their consciousness will be discontinued. Their consciousness will be. The room went dead silent. Sarah felt a cold rage building in her chest, but her voice remained level. I see. And if we surrender, your leaders and intellectuals will be preserved for processing. The remainder of your species will be relocated to serve our needs in other systems. As slaves, as resources, Sarah looked around the command center at the faces of Earth's finest leaders, scientists, and military officers. She saw her own anger reflected in their expressions. I have a counterproposal, she said. You are in no position to negotiate. Oh, I think we are. Sarah turned to Admiral Thompson. Admiral, please show our guest what we've been working on. The main display switched to show a view of space near the alien vessels. Emerging from Earth's shadow came a fleet of human spacecraft, not the elegant, purpose-built warships of science fiction, but but converted civilian vessels bristling with improvised weapons and armor. Impossible, the creature repeated. Your species has no significant space-based military capability. We do now, Sarah said. Turns out when you threaten to harvest our people, we get creative very quickly. Those are converted cargo haulers, research vessels, even some of the larger private yachts, all armed with nuclear missiles, kinetic projectiles, and some very interesting experimental weapons our scientists have been working on. Dr. Volkov spoke up from his workstation. The lead ship is carrying our prototype antimatter torpedo. We only had enough antimatter for one, but the theoretical yield should be sufficient to crack your ship's hull. You would destroy your own people? The creature demanded, to save the rest of our species from slavery? Yes. Sarah's voice was ice cold. But I'm hoping it won't come to that. You see, we've learned something about you in the last day. What? You're not warriors. You're scavengers who depend on deception and intimidation. Your ships are mostly illusion. Your technology is impressive but fragile. And you've never encountered a species that fought back effectively. The creature's compound eyes glittered with what might have been frustration. Your analysis is flawed. We have harvested hundreds of worlds. Primitive worlds. Agent Reed interjected. Species that hadn't developed advanced technology or unified resistance. You pick on the weak. Oh, Sarah nodded. Which brings us to our counterproposal. You will release our people immediately and leave this system. In return, we won't test our theories about how fragile your ships really are. And if we refuse, then we find out if human stubbornness is stronger than alien technology. Sarah gestured to the tactical display. We have 17 vessels converging on your position, quantum interference generators disrupting your power systems, and the combined military might of every nation on Earth backing our play. How many species have you encountered that could mount that kind of coordinated response in under 24 hours? For the first time since revealing its true nature, the creature looked uncertain. Its compound eyes shifted between different screens, calculating odds. You would sacrifice your captured people for the sake of resistance, it said finally. If necessary, Sarah replied, but we'd prefer not to. Your choice. The creature was silent for nearly a minute, its alien features unreadable. Finally, it spoke. You are not what we expected. No, Sarah agreed. We rarely are. Your species shows unusual characteristics. Perhaps there is value in reassessing our approach. Sarah felt a flicker of hope, but kept her expression neutral. Meaning, we propose an alternative arrangement. Your people will be returned unharmed. In exchange, you will provide us with samples of your knowledge and genetic diversity. Voluntary samples. From volunteers. No, Sarah said immediately. No? No deals, no compromises, no arrangements. You leave, we keep our people, and you never come back. Those are our terms. The creature's features shifted in what might have been surprise or anger. You cannot be serious. We offer you the chance to survive with minimal losses. We're not interested in survival with losses, General Morrison said bluntly. We're interested in complete victory. Victory. The creature almost seemed amused. You have 17 crewed vessels against our superior technology. Dr. Nakamura looked up from her readouts. Actually, their power levels are down to 30% and falling. The quantum interference is working better than expected. Sarah smiled. Ambassador, or whatever you really are, let me explain something about humans that your research clearly missed. What? We're pack hunters who evolved on a world full of things that wanted to eat us. We learned to fight smarter, not stronger. We learned to cooperate against threats too big for any individual to handle. And we learned that sometimes the best defense is a very aggressive offense. The tactical display showed the human fleet closing in on the alien vessels. The ships were a motley collection. Converted research vessels, mining ships, even a luxury liner that had been hastily armed with missile pods. But they moved with coordinated purpose, following attack patterns that had been developed and rehearsed in the space of a single day. Your ships are failing, Sarah observed. Your illusions are collapsing. Your power systems are compromised. And you have less than 10 minutes before the first human vessel is in weapons range. This is madness, the creature protested. Your species cannot survive without guidance. We've done pretty well so far, Sarah replied. 5 million years of evolution, from primitive hominids to spacefaring civilization, all without alien interference. I think we'll manage. The creature's image flickered as its ship's systems continued to fail. When it stabilized, there was something like desperation in its voice. You do not understand the dangers that exist in the galaxy. There are things far worse than us. Maybe, Sarah acknowledged. But we'll face them as free humans, not as your property. The silence stretched for long moments as the creature apparently weighed its options. Finally, it spoke. Your people will be returned to your outer system facilities unharmed. We will depart your system immediately. All of them, Sarah insisted. Every last human you've taken. Agreed. And the facilities will be left intact and functional. Agreed. Sarah nodded to Admiral Thompson, who began issuing orders to the human fleet to maintain distance but stay ready. She turned back to the creature on the screen. There's one more thing. What? Before you leave, you're going to tell us everything you know about other species you've encountered. The ones you've harvested, the ones you've failed to harvest, and any other threats we should know about. The creature's compound eyes glittered. Why would we provide such information? Sarah's smile was predatory. Because if you ever come back to human space, we want to be ready. And because maybe, just maybe, some of those other species you've harvested are still alive somewhere and would like to know that resistance is possible. You would interfere with our operations in other systems? If we can, Sarah said simply. We don't like bullies. The creature stared at her for a long moment. Then its image began to fade. Your species is troublesome. Thank you, Sarah replied. We try to be. As the transmission ended, cheers erupted throughout the command center, but Sarah remained focused on the displays showing the alien ships beginning to move away from Earth, carrying their human prisoners toward the outer system facilities where they would be released. It wasn't over yet. It wouldn't be over until every human was safely back where they belonged, and the creatures calling themselves harvesters were nothing but a rapidly fading energy signature heading for interstellar space. But humanity had passed its first test as a spacefaring species. They had met an alien threat, seen through its deceptions, and fought back successfully. More importantly, they had done it together. Not as competing nations or ideologies, but as one species determined to remain free. Sarah looked around the command center at the tired but triumphant faces of Earth's defenders and felt a fierce pride. The universe was vast and full of unknown dangers, but humanity had just proven they were ready to face whatever came next. They were not prey. They were not victims. They were humans, and that meant something. 3 months after what historians would call the Harvester Crisis, Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of humanity's first purpose-built space warship, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on Earth's orbital defense grid. The view was breathtaking. Dozens of space platforms connected by energy conduits, bristling with weapons that had been theoretical just months before. Hard to believe we built all this in 12 weeks, commented Admiral Thompson, joining her at the reinforced viewport. Sarah nodded. Fear is a powerful motivator. So is righteous anger. Below them, Earth looked much the same as it always had. Blue oceans, white clouds, brown and green continents. But humanity's perspective had changed forever. They were no longer alone in the universe, and they now knew the galaxy was far more dangerous than they had imagined. Status report from the outer system? Sarah asked. All facilities are back online and fully operational, Admiral Thompson replied. The rescued personnel have completed their debriefings. The harvesters released everyone exactly as promised. Apparently they really don't like the idea of armed humans hunting them across the galaxy. Sarah smiled grimly. The threat to pursue the harvesters to other systems had been largely a bluff. But it had worked. Humanity didn't yet have the technology for interstellar pursuit, but the aliens hadn't known that. What about the intelligence they provided before leaving? Admiral Thompson's expression grew serious. That's Complicated. Dr. Webb and his team have been analyzing the data for weeks. It's disturbing reading. Sarah turned from the viewport to face him. How disturbing. According to the Harvester records, they've been operating for over 3,000 years. They've harvested 47 different species in that time, taking approximately 12 billion sentient beings as slaves or for processing. The numbers were staggering. Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Any survivors? Unknown. The harvesters maintain slave populations in several systems, but the data doesn't indicate which species are still extant or in what condition. Admiral Thompson paused. However, there is some good news. I could use some. 17 species successfully resisted harvesting attempts. Most were at technological levels similar to our own. The harvesters seem to target civilizations that have achieved spaceflight, but haven't yet developed effective interplanetary defenses. Sarah nodded. That matched their analysis of the harvesters' tactics. They were scavengers who preyed on the vulnerable, not warriors who sought out strong opponents. Speaking of defenses, Admiral Thompson continued, the Defense Council is ready for your final approval on Project Lighthouse. Sarah turned back to watch the construction crews. Project Lighthouse was humanity's insurance policy against future threats. A network of automated monitoring stations positioned throughout the solar system, designed to detect any approaching alien vessels years before they could reach Earth. Approved, she said. How long until deployment? 6 months for the inner system, 2 years for the complete network. We're also proceeding with the deep space exploration missions to investigate some of the systems the harvesters mentioned. Any word from the other projects? Admiral Thompson consulted his tablet. The xenobiology labs are making progress on understanding harvester physiology. Turns out they're actually quite fragile, heavily dependent on their technology for survival. Dr. Nakamura thinks their homeworld might have very low gravity and little atmospheric protection. Evolutionary pressure to develop technology instead of physical strength, Sarah mused. Probably why they became scavengers instead of warriors. The linguistics team has had some success translating the cultural databases the harvesters left behind. Dr. Webb thinks we might be able to establish communication with some of the enslaved species, assuming any are still capable of independent thought. Sarah felt a spark of hope. If humanity could make contact with other resistance movements, they might not be alone in their opposition to species like the harvesters. What about military development? Ahead of schedule on all fronts. The quantum disruption cannons are entering mass production. We've got 3 more warships under construction, and the Marine Space Corps has their first battalion ready for deployment. Sarah nodded approvingly. The Marine Space Corps had been her idea. Specially trained soldiers equipped to fight in zero gravity, vacuum, and aboard alien vessels. If humanity encountered more threats like the harvesters, they would be ready to take the fight to the enemy. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Admiral Thompson activated his communicator. Admiral Thompson here. Sir, this is Colonel Santos at Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha. We're detecting an incoming transmission from outside the system. Sarah and Admiral Thompson exchanged glances. Origin? The Admiral asked. Unknown, sir. But it's using the same communication protocols the harvesters established during first contact. Sarah's blood ran cold. Are they coming back? Unknown, sir. The transmission is requesting permission to approach for peaceful contact. But, Colonel Santos paused. Sir, the energy signature is completely different from the harvester vessels. This is something else. Sarah activated her own communicator. This is Director Chen. Patch me through to the Global Defense Command and alert all defense stations. I'm returning to Earth immediately. As their shuttle descended toward Earth, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Another alien contact, another unknown threat or opportunity. But this time, humanity was ready. 4 hours later, Sarah stood in the same command center where the harvester crisis had begun. But everything had changed. The hastily assembled coalition of the previous crisis had been replaced by a permanent global defense command, staffed by the best minds from every nation. The screen showed not just Earth's defenses but the entire solar system defense grid. Status report, Sarah called out. General Harrison, now Director of Planetary Defense, spoke first. Single vessel, approaching from the direction of Alpha Centauri. Energy signature indicates advanced propulsion, but power levels are much lower than the harvester ships. Size: approximately 1/10 the mass of a harvester vessel. More like a large exploration ship than a harvesting platform. Dr. Webb approached with his analysis. The communication patterns are definitely alien, but they're using mathematical concepts and scientific principles as a universal language, very different from the harvesters' approach. How so? The harvesters already knew our languages and just talked to us. This new contact is trying to establish communication from scratch, using prime numbers and physical constants. It's what we'd expect from genuine first contact. Sarah felt cautiously optimistic. What are they saying? Basic greetings, requests for peaceful meeting, and... Dr. Webb paused, checking his notes. This is interesting. They're transmitting what appears to be a warning. A warning about what? They're sending star charts showing the movement patterns of what they call consumer fleets. Based on the galactic coordinates, they're talking about the harvesters. Agent Reed, now head of Alien Intelligence Analysis, looked up from his workstation. Director, I think we might be dealing with another species that's had contact with the harvesters. Survivors? Sarah asked. Possibly. Or maybe another species that successfully resisted. The warning suggests they're actively tracking harvester movements. Sarah considered this. If there were other species fighting back against the harvesters, humanity might have found potential allies. Open a channel, she ordered. Let's see what they want. The main screen flickered to life, showing not the elegant facade the harvesters had presented, but something that looked more like a proper alien species. The being that appeared was short and stocky, with metallic gray skin and 4 arms. When it spoke, the words were clearly translated by some technology, but the cadence and phrasing felt authentic rather than scripted. Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. I am Commander Korth of the Resistance Alliance. We detected the defeat of a consumer fleet in your system and have come to offer congratulations and alliance. Sarah stepped forward. I am Director Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Government. We appreciate your congratulations, but we're cautious about new contacts after our recent experience. Understandable, Korth replied, and something in his expression suggested approval. The consumers are skilled deceivers. The fact that you saw through their deception and successfully resisted indicates that your species has great potential. Consumers, Agent Reed noted quietly, another name for the harvesters. Sarah nodded, then addressed Korth. How many species are part of this resistance alliance? Currently, 7 spacefaring species and remnants of 12 others who lost their homeworlds but maintain ship-based populations. We have been fighting the consumers for over 2 centuries. And you're winning? Korth's expression became grim. We are surviving. The consumers are not easily defeated, but they can be stopped. Your victory proves that resistance is possible. Dr. Webb stepped forward. Commander Korth, we recovered data from the consumer fleet before they departed. It indicated they had harvested dozens of species over thousands of years. The data you recovered was incomplete, Korth replied. The consumers have existed for over 5,000 years and have harvested hundreds of species. But they are not invincible. 43 species have successfully resisted, and 19 have actually driven them away permanently. Okay, Sarah felt a surge of hope. How? Through cooperation, advanced technology, and the willingness to fight rather than submit. Your species demonstrated all 3 qualities in your first encounter. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah asked. An exchange of information and technology. We share what we know about consumer tactics and technology. You share your innovations. Together, we become stronger. Sarah looked around the command center at her team. They had spent months preparing for threats they could barely imagine, and now they were being offered help by experienced fighters. We're interested, she said. But we'll need proof of your claims and assurance that this isn't another deception. Of course, Korth replied. We would expect no less. Perhaps a meeting on neutral ground? Your lunar satellite would be suitable. Over the following weeks, what became known as the Luna Accords established the foundation for humanity's entry into what could only be called galactic politics. The Resistance Alliance was real. 7 species who had banded together to oppose the Harvesters and similar predatory civilizations. Sarah found herself appointed as Earth's first galactic ambassador, tasked with representing humanity's interests in a universe far more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. But it was also a universe where cooperation and resistance were possible. Standing once again in the observation deck of Earth's first battleship, now christened the Defender of Earth, Sarah watched as alien vessels from 3 different species worked alongside human engineers to install new defensive systems. The technology exchange had already yielded quantum shields, improved weapon systems, and propulsion technology that would allow human ships to travel between star systems. "The scouts report back tomorrow," Admiral Thompson said, joining her once again at the viewport. Sarah nodded. 3 months earlier, they had sent exploration ships to investigate the systems where the Harvesters were believed to maintain slave populations. If there were survivors who could be rescued, humanity intended to help them. Any word from the Deep Space Monitoring Network? All quiet. The new sensors can detect approaching ships from 20 light-years away. We'll have months of warning if anyone unfriendly heads our way. Sarah smiled. Good. I'd rather not have any more surprise visits. Below them, Earth continued its ancient rotation. But everything had changed. Humanity was no longer an isolated species wondering if they were alone in the universe. They had allies, enemies, and a purpose that extended far beyond their own solar system. The question that had started it all, from whom did Earth need defending, had been answered. They needed defending from predators, slavers, and those who would harvest them for their own purposes. But they had learned something equally important. They were strong enough to defend themselves, and they weren't alone in the fight. Sarah thought about the captured humans who had been returned safely, about the families reunited, and the worlds that might yet be saved. The Harvesters had come to Earth, expecting to find another easy target. Instead, they had encountered something they weren't prepared for. A species that refused to be prey. A soft chime indicated another incoming message. Sarah activated her communicator. Director Chen here. Ma'am, this is Deep Space Command. We're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler 442 system. The transmission indicates a consumer fleet is beginning harvesting operations. Sarah felt the familiar cold anger building in her chest. But this time, it was accompanied by something else. The knowledge that humanity could do something about it. Alert the Alliance fleet and prepare the Defender for immediate departure, she ordered. It's time the Harvesters learned what happens when they threaten species under our protection. As alarms sounded throughout the ship and crews prepared for humanity's first interstellar rescue mission, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The beings who had offered to defend Earth had asked the wrong question. They had asked humanity to trust them for protection. But humans had always been better at protecting themselves. And now they were ready to protect others as well. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of allies and opportunities for those brave enough to reach out and take them. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not as refugees or victims, but as defenders and liberators. It was exactly where they belonged.